In about 10 days, Ross is gonna throw him away. I'm gonna be real with you, Meech. If Rick Ross, seeing what he did to you, because he knew what he was doing standing on the side of him, right?
Every now and then, the hip-hop world braces for a monumental return. A larger-than-life figure steps back onto the scene, and fans expect fireworks. But what if that celebrated comeback was actually doomed from the start? What if the real drama wasn't the long prison sentence or the epic release, but a series of hidden power moves from the people who were supposed to have his back? Big Meech, once the commanding presence behind the Black Mafia family, walked out of prison into an explosion of hype. Legends had been made in his absence, entire shows and business deals were standing by, and the man known for transforming street narratives into an empire seemed set for a redemption story like no other. But the forces swirling around him, rivalries, old grudges, shadowy alliances, were about to tear apart every plan he'd built in his mind. Today, we're exposing how one of the most anticipated homecomings in hip-hop was sabotaged by betrayal, half-truths, and clashing egos. By the end, you'll question whether loyalty still exists in this cutthroat game, or if betrayal is the only consistent currency. But the real shock is how quickly this comeback unraveled, and who actually pulled the strings. Most people in the hip-hop sphere know the name Big Meech, but the scale of his influence often goes unspoken. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, Meech wasn't just a figure of local renown, he was practically an urban legend. Stories circulated of his lavish lifestyle, glitzy parties, and charitable contributions to entire neighborhoods. He and his brother built the Black Mafia family, BMF, into a brand that merged street connections with mainstream music, bridging the gap between hustlers and rap stars. His downfall was sudden and dramatic. Legal troubles crept in, accusations surfaced, and eventually he found himself facing a bleak reality, a multi-year prison sentence. For over a decade, Meech watched from behind bars as the hip-hop landscape shifted. Old alliances crumbled, new stars rose, and the game he once knew evolved into something unrecognizable. Yet despite his absence, his reputation never truly faded. Generations of artists continued dropping references to BMF as a symbol of grand ambition and unstoppable hustle. When news first broke that Meech might be eligible for an early release, social media caught fire. Memes popped up proclaiming the king is returning and BMF forever. Buzz grew around the idea that he'd pick up right where he left off, organizing massive events, possibly launching record labels, and taking on big projects that only someone with his flair for the dramatic could accomplish. Behind the scenes, there was more than just chatter. 50 Cent, known for his business mind and unwavering self-confidence, had already turned Meech's life story into a successful TV series. Not only did this keep Meech's name relevant, but it introduced him to a new generation of viewers who hadn't even been alive when BMF was at its peak. By all accounts, 50 had gone above and beyond, not just licensing a story, but supporting Meech's family financially and ensuring they never felt completely abandoned. With the countdown to Meech's release ticking away, it seemed like everything was in place for the ultimate redemption. A loyal superstar had been waiting to partner up, a public that never forgot him was hungry for his story, and a Netflix-saturated generation was ready for the next big gangster-turned-legend narrative. What could go wrong? It all seemed perfect, until a certain heavyweight stepped in, turning this fairy tale comeback into a tangled web of rivalries. As soon as Big Meech was finally free, or even on the verge of being free, another giant of rap, Rick Ross, made his presence known. Ross, the man behind hits like Hustlin' and the lavish persona of the biggest boss, had always flaunted his connections to the underworld mystique. He'd used references to infamous figures in his lyrics, lending an air of street authenticity to his brand. So when he saw the opportunity to align with a real-life legend in Big Meech, it felt like a natural move, or so it seemed. For Meech, fresh out of confinement, Ross's approach came across as a chance to jump back into the spotlight quickly. Ross promised a massive welcome home concert that would celebrate Meech's legacy in front of tens of thousands of fans. Media outlets whispered about potential appearances from top-tier hip-hop figures, special tributes, and a night that would double as a triumphant statement. Big Meech was not just back. He was back in a way only BMF could orchestrate. However, anyone familiar with hip-hop controversies knew about the long-running tensions between Ross and 50 Cent. What started as diss tracks had escalated into lawsuits, personal jabs on social media, and a sense that these two moguls would never find common ground. In 50's corner, Being tight with Big Meech signified more than just a friendship. Meech represented an integral part of the cultural aura 50 had invested in. For Ross, it was an opportunity to overshadow his rival by swooping in on the BMF narrative. Whispers grew louder. Was Ross's interest in Meech purely about loyalty? Or did he see Meech as a golden chess piece in the never-ending feud with 50? It's one thing to show love to a legend. It's another to leverage that legend's influence to weaken an enemy. None of these thoughts might have been obvious to Meech, who was tasting freedom for the first time in years. But to everyone else watching from the outside, it was an unmistakable power play. But before Meech could even catch his breath, a single decision would implode all those grand plans. Ross's proposed concert was, by all accounts, set to be gigantic. Insiders leaked info about multiple venues vying to host it, each promising top-notch security and state-of-the-art production. Flyovers, elaborate stage setups, cameo appearances. It was supposed to be the kind of extravaganza that would immortalize Big Meech's return. Ticket sales were whispered to be astronomical, with high-rolling fans ready to drop serious cash just to be part of the hype. Meech, still acclimating to life outside, reportedly saw this as the financial springboard he desperately needed. After nearly 2 decades in the system, he wasn't exactly swimming in resources. A massive, star-studded event could wipe out lingering debts, provide for his family, and catapult him back into business. From a distance, it looked like the greatest favor Ross could have offered. Let me help you secure the bag, and let's show the world your comeback in style. Then, with almost no warning, everything vaporized. Insiders started leaking that the concert was canceled. Blogs picked it up. Fans raged on Twitter, and confusion reigned. What happened to the unstoppable force that Rick Ross was supposed to be? Did some legal snag force them to pull the plug? Did 50 Cent intervene? Or did Ross decide last minute it wasn't worth it? Officially, no one wanted to take the blame. Whispers started that Ross had distanced himself for business reasons. Others claimed it was government pressure, while a few pinned it on 50 Cent's alleged behind-the-scenes sabotage. Social media erupted with theories, but one fact was crystal clear. The biggest day of Meech's post-prison life was trashed. In the midst of the chaos, observers started noticing a pattern. Ross had, in the past, aligned himself with notable names, such as Larry Hoover, and then backed off when the situation became complicated. Was this just more of the same? Or was there a deeper reason Ross was ghosting Meech at the precise moment the concert fell apart? And just when it looked like things couldn't get messier, an unlikely ally stepped in to blow the lid off this hidden agenda. Few people realized just how extensive 50 Cent's support for Meech had been while Meech was locked away. According to various sources close to both men, 50 did more than merely license BMF's story for a TV series. He also provided financial help, so Meech's family wouldn't struggle on their own. There weren't press conferences or splashy social media announcements. It was the kind of low-profile, real-world support that 50, behind all his public feuds, is known to give his close associates. Once Meech was finally on his way home, 50 and Tony Yayo reportedly visited him to celebrate. They had big plans for joint business ventures, maybe expansions of the BMF brand, new spin-offs, or even collaborations that could elevate Meech into a legitimate entertainment mogul. All signs pointed to a solid partnership that would ease Meech's transition back into society. Then, in the blink of an eye, Meech's public alignment with Rick Ross became the talk of the internet. Photos of them standing side by side circulated widely. Fans asked where 50 fit into this. Tensions were obvious. Ross and 50 had never truly squashed their differences, and Meech choosing Ross's grand concert over anything 50 had set up screamed disloyalty, or at least poor judgment. 50 is known for many things, but subtlety isn't one of them. Outraged, he took to Instagram, dropping not-so-cryptic accusations about Meech's integrity. He even posted a picture of a rat to drive home the point that Meech had folded on him. Many initially wrote off 50's reaction as typical social media theatrics, until more details trickled out, suggesting that the entire fiasco was indeed orchestrated by Ross, leaving Meech stuck with the bad press. For 50, this wasn't just a competition over who got to celebrate Meech's return. It was about the real money, time, and energy he'd poured into preserving Meech's legacy. You could say 50 had turned BMF into an intellectual property juggernaut, and now, out of nowhere, Ross was attempting to overshadow that investment by offering Meech the type of event that would rival or overshadow 50's TV series in cultural impact. Viewers saw the meltdown in real time. 50 didn't mince words. Meech responded with half-hearted statements about never folding or telling, but the damage was already done. Fans, industry veterans, and gossip pundits wondered how Meech could turn his back on the one person who'd consistently been in his corner. But while 50 aired his frustrations in public, the real betrayal was happening behind the scenes, revealing who truly pulled the strings. When everything started to unravel, a wave of insider leaks surfaced. People who claimed to be close to both Rick Ross and Big Meech spoke up anonymously or through hushed interviews, alleging that Ross had meticulously planned the entire drama. According to one source, Ross saw Meech's return not as a heartfelt reunion, but as the perfect chance to insert himself between Meech and 50. By doing so, Ross would remain relevant, possibly siphon off any big deals heading Meech's way, and then vanish once his own brand got the boost it needed. There were also theories about how Ross might have manipulated local venues, security requirements, or permit filings so that the Welcome Home concert was impossible to run smoothly. That way, it wouldn't be Ross's fault the event got canceled, and any blame would fall squarely on Meech, or even 50, depending on the narrative Ross fed to the public. The audacity of these allegations stunned fans. Would Ross really sabotage a man's comeback just to stoke his personal rivalry? Almost overnight, Ross started deflecting questions about his involvement with Meech. He mentioned a sudden shoulder injury that required his attention, timed suspiciously with the cancellation. Then, he began plugging new business ventures, like crypto tokens or luxury car shows, as though the entire Big Meech fiasco had never existed. It wasn't the first time Ross had been accused of switching lanes whenever pressure mounted. Some pointed back to the Larry Hoover controversy a few years earlier, when Ross allegedly used Hoover's name for clout, only to exit the situation as soon as it became inconvenient. If that pattern held, then what Ross did to Meech was simply part of a much larger strategy. Attach yourself to street legends, harvest the hype, and disappear before you have to deliver on any real promises. Beyond the opportunism, another rumor stalked Ross's reputation, that he was once a corrections officer. This wasn't mere gossip. Documents and photos emerged years ago showing Ross in a uniform, seemingly working for the government. While some rappers can distance themselves from old day jobs, Ross's entire persona had been built on the illusion of a street boss, a direct contradiction to actually wearing a badge, even if only as a prison guard. To some critics, this background raised questions. Could Ross be funneling information back to authorities? Was he stirring chaos in the rap game for reasons beyond clout? While these accusations remain unconfirmed, they add a layer of mystery and paranoia to any situation Ross becomes part of. Yet, as the evidence stacked up against Ross, Meech found himself more isolated than ever, facing consequences he never saw coming. After the concert's abrupt collapse, rumors spread about Meech's financial situation. He had spent nearly 2 decades behind bars, so he didn't have the war chest one might expect from someone once at the helm of BMF. That was the whole point of this massive comeback spectacle, to stabilize his finances. Now, with the event canceled, and with no immediate plan B, Meech's family was reportedly feeling the pressure. Could 50 step in again after being blindsided? Would new investors show up, or was Meech stuck in a financial quagmire? Behind the scenes, some insisted Meech was scrambling to revive the show elsewhere, but venue after venue remained hesitant. The liability issues, security concerns, and media storm were too much for most arenas to handle. Every day that passed, his once celebrated return lost momentum, and in the fast-paced world of entertainment, momentum is everything. Arguably, the biggest casualty in all this was Meech's relationship with 50 Cent. While they hadn't publicly declared war on each other, the tension was palpable. 50's pointed posts labeling Meech as a traitor or a sellout left an indelible mark on fans. Some took 50's side wholeheartedly, calling Meech ungrateful. Others argued that Meech deserved the right to choose how he conducted his comeback. Still, the consensus among industry insiders was that Meech had burned a crucial bridge with one of the few people who genuinely had his back. As for Rick Ross, he went about his business, rarely mentioning Meech or the failed concert. Fans noticed that while he was busy touring, promoting new music, or hosting his high-profile car events, Meech was left dealing with the fallout practically on his own. It raised the uncomfortable question: if Ross had truly been sincere about helping Meech, wouldn't he stick around to salvage the plan? Some of the most telling comments came from veteran figures who typically steer clear of messy feuds. They shook their heads at Meech's decision, calling it a massive fumble. Whack 100, known for speaking his mind, suggested Meech walked away from a guaranteed multi-season extension of his story through 50's TV empire. He lost not just the immediate concert payday, but potentially tens of millions in future brand deals, spin-off shows, and film opportunities. In other words, instead of re-entering society under the mentorship of someone who had real Hollywood clout and a proven track record of turning real-life stories into big bucks, Meech got stuck in a fiasco with an artist whose main interest might have been stirring drama. With friendships in ruins and his comeback on life support, Meech now faces a question that could define his legacy. In the weeks following the botched concert, rumors popped up that Ross reached out, maybe to make peace with 50 Cent, maybe to downplay his role in the fiasco. If this is true, it underscores just how volatile the situation became. Ross, who rarely backs down from a fight, appeared to want an off-ramp from this fiasco. Perhaps he recognized that alienating 50 and an entire BMF fan base could damage his reputation far more than he initially anticipated. But one lingering question remains. Is it already too late for Meech to salvage his reputation? And can Ross ever regain trust after a betrayal this big? We've followed Big Meech from a celebrated prison release to a nightmare of broken promises and canceled concerts. We've seen Rick Ross appear as a savior, only to vanish when things took a bad turn. And we've watched 50 Cent, arguably Meech's most loyal ally, turn cold after feeling betrayed. In an industry where every move is made under the spotlight, trust is rare and easily lost. Yet, in the midst of this heartbreak, one fundamental truth emerges. Sometimes, the biggest challenges aren't the legal battles or the prison sentences, but the people who stand beside you once the gates open. When the dust settles, will Meech find redemption in a new alliance? Or did he single-handedly destroy the best opportunity he had? And what does this saga say about hip-hop's obsession with authenticity versus the harsh reality of showmanship and self-interest? Ultimately, this is more than just a story about a canceled concert or a feud between music heavyweights. It's a cautionary tale about loyalty, manipulation, and the steep cost of aligning with the wrong figure at the wrong time. Drop a comment if you believe Big Meech can rebound from this chaos, or if Ross's alleged betrayal and 50 Cent's anger sealed Meech's fate for good.